Good day everyone. I'm going to do some minor adjustments to my do-it-yourself M4. So I thought this would be a great opportunity to show you how it's disassembled and some of the workings and internals that I did, the modifications that I made. So let's get to it. Let's remove the magazine. Fake magazine. Let's remove the sling. Now, we are going to undo these two screws so we can pull out the upper receiver from the lower receiver. Oh, and before you do this, make sure the weapon is unloaded. Give it a slight twist. Now this one you're going to have to jimmy up a little so it gets free. Then you can pull out the lower receiver separated from the upper receiver. While it's open, let me show you some of the workings I did on the lower receiver. See, this is the trigger. It's on safety. Remove the safety. The safety is simply a rotating aluminum plate which blocks the trigger when it's in the safe position. Remove it from the safe position on fire and the trigger has free travel. It's very simple. Anybody can do it as long as the dimensions and the clearances are alright. I had to do this by a little trial and error, but since I had some experience working on my earlier AR-15 air rifle, it took a little while, but I got it done. Trigger has a spring there under it. Push it. Now this screw, adjustment screw, is to make sure that the trigger does not move high enough so that it will block the hammer lug. It should be adjusted the right position so the hammer slides over this inclined plate and into the notch. Now there's the U-channel aluminum plate I made so that the magazine release can work, and there's a spring from an old ballpoint pen. The old system in the airsoft wherein the rod from the mag release notch is straight into the mag release button will block the trigger, so I had to make that U-channel. The aluminum plate that holds the pistol grip, I simply shaved from thick aluminum and reinforced it with 1/4 steel plate so that it won't move around so much. It's not really screwed down or epoxied down into the lower receiver, but given my experience now, if I do another one, or even now, I can epoxy it to make sure it's more stable and sturdier. So here's the problem. When I open this, the bolt, there's the bolt, is set a little back from the actual position so that the O-ring is coming out of the barrel end. As a result, gas is escaping. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the bolt a little further or move this whole rifle base back a little so that the O-ring will fit into the end of the barrel and thus seal it tightly. That's where this aluminum plate rear bracket comes in. I have to remove this, and push the whole rifle base back a little so that the bolt will move forward into the end of the breech. So I'm going to remove that now. We'll just remove the screw. Remove the screw here. And you can remove your rear bracket. As you can see, it's just made from aluminum, which I fashioned. Could be thicker, or I could redesign this so it'll be sturdier based on my experience here. So now that this is removed, the only thing left is to try to adjust this. I don't know if I have to remove the delta ring, which means removing the front hand grip, but let's see. I'm going to have to do a little hammering to remove this pin. So I'm going to remove the entire carry handle assembly so it doesn't get damaged. Now I'm going to remove this pin. After we remove it, we can pull out all the internals and maybe push the rifle a little back. Actually pull the rifle a little back. So let's do that now. Okay, managed to remove the brass pin there. So now I'm going to have to remove this. It's relatively light. It's not really difficult to remove. So there's the brass plug at the end. The hammer spring. Now you can remove the hammer by rotating this hammer lug. To which you can pull out the hammer. Now, to remove the bolt, there's a screw there, which is the bolt catch, the one that catches the hammer. There's a lug on the bolt that catches the hammer, so we're going to have to unscrew that. Let's see if I can. After unscrewing this, I can now pull out the bolt. There it is. There it is. So now you can pull out the bolt gently. This catches, so just push it gently there. And you can now easily pull out the bolt. Now, it may simply be a problem, the bolt being loose. So we can simply put a lock nut, a lock washer there, so that this nut won't turn, and that will secure the bolt. I'm going to try and do that, but I'm still going to see if the rifle itself is securely fixed to the upper receiver so it doesn't move. There's no movement backwards, resulting in this O-ring not going into the rear end of the breech properly. Well, it looks like that the steel bolt holding the bolt to the charging handle coming loose because this nut is moving. So what I'm going to do is simply tighten this nut with something. It could be thread lock, could be Teflon, to make sure there's minimal movement. The O-ring is fitting nicely now that I tightened this, so I don't think I have to readjust the placement of the base rifle. So I'm just going to put some Teflon on there because that's all I have right now. Or someone suggested super glue, which could work also, but later super glue might be a little too hard to remove when you need to make repairs. So I'm just going to put some Teflon on for now. Okay, so now tighten it, put a little dab of thread lock there on the nut so it doesn't move, and we're not going to put it back in carefully. So I can see the O-ring in there. It fits right into the end of the barrel, just before the opening. So even with movement from the charging handle, the O-ring is still inside the barrel. So I think the problem is fixed, and now we can put the rifle back together. So we simply do the reverse order. The bolt lug first, and this is kind of tricky. Amazing, got it the first time. And the hammer. Our hammer lug. I have to position it again in the right position. I believe that's the correct position. I hope so. Hammer spring. Now you can increase the tension on the hammer spring so that we will have more CO2 coming out, but for the purposes that I have now for this rifle, simply for some fun shoots or for plinking, the current power is okay. So here we go. Have to push in from the other side. Take the pin. Now there's a rounded side and a flat side. The rounded side is what we have to push in first. Oh, here it is. Here's the rounded side. Make sure the lug is in the proper position. Hammer, tap it gently. Okay, it's not in the proper position here, so to move it a little. Tap it gently. There. It's now correctly placed. Next up, our rear bracket. Slide it in. We have our retaining screw. So after placing our rear bracket, and I have to secure it with another retaining screw here, the base of the hammer lug. Okay, got it. Okay, now tighten our retaining screw here. Something tells me I'm going to have to change that retaining screw because it's losing its head threads, head notches. Okay, now tighten our bottom screw, and it's okay. All we have to do is put it back together again. Test. Hammer lug is moving. Everything seems to be okay. Let's put it back together. Is there anything I need to fix here or adjust? Seems to be okay. You do notice that the trigger is slightly off center because the wear and tear in the pivot hole. I'm going to have to replace that trigger with a new one so that there won't be so much free play. That's the purpose why I put that spring there, to make sure there's some tension on the trigger. Carefully slide it back in, rear first. Make sure this flange fits over the screw hole. There's a slight shoulder in the screw hole, so the flange has to fit over that. Once it's fitted, we can now put the screw in. This one first, and the other one. Tighten. Make sure there's no free play. So now we can put in our carrying handle. Now we're going to check if our zero moved. So place away all this stuff first. Let's do some shots there. Okay, let's see how we did. Aim for the center. And there's the hole in the center. So it's good. So that's it for now. Now to do some